the fact that you're aware of that and paying attention to that and asking yourself that question, and that you and your husband are talking that over. Again, generally speaking, most couples that I work with, one will be more on the camp of we need to push harder, and the other will be on the camp of we got to take it easy. And so I know sometimes you two are in that same
Yep.
position. That's a good thing. That means that there's probably a middle ground in there where
Right.
one of you wants to insulate more and the other one wants to push a little harder. Then probably somewhere in the middle is a good way to go.
Well, and I
Um,
guess you just keep making runs at it, right? You just keep asking and suggesting and hope that something eventually just takes.
yeah, the incubation analogy again, because I do think time is still your friend in terms of more maturation, more interest in doing things, maybe opportunity to find something that they're interested in that will motivate them to move forward a little bit more. But sometimes it's also waves, right? And we've seen this over the course of our work together, that sometimes depression will just set in and it's a worse time for a month or so. And for whatever reason it comes and it's a worse month or two, then all of a sudden it starts to lift and things get a little bit better. So there could be other factors that are happening within your son that are outside of everyone's control, essentially.
Yeah. And
But
I did think about that too, that maybe there's a kind of a dry spell where he needs a little bit more time alone than normal.
right,
The thing that's so great about certainly young adults that are on the spectrum is they don't need a ton of socialization. They just need a little bit here and there
yeah, yeah, a
to
little
keep
dab
them
will do
going.
them. Yeah,
Yes,
usually, like they're not.
absolutely.
It's tough because some kids are very socially like they want those relationships and they have a hard time with them. That's a little bit more of a painful situation than a kid that's like, well, I just need a little bit. A little bit's fine. If I get a little here and there, then I'm in good shape and I don't need more. But it's hard when you get a mismatch on that, like a kid who really wants to be social and is just having a hard time doing it, or the opposite, where they have to do a lot of social things, but they just really can't handle it or don't like it.
Right.
So,
And that is the challenge with finding certainly a job that gives them enough excitement and interest, but at the same time doesn't overwhelm them socially. It's very
right.
challenging.
Yeah. To get a little bit more practical about this, do you want to talk about some things that you think you might try over the next,
Well, so
you
one of
know,
the things that I thought about, because he does like animals and he has done some volunteering with dog rescues in the past, is our local shelter is looking for dog walkers where you actually sign up and every Tuesday you come for an hour or two and you just walk dogs. And of course, they're looking for people who can handle big dogs, which he can. So I think he'd be a good fit. The only downside is that just the introduction meeting is a couple of weeks away. I'd like it to be something sooner, but I suggested to him via text today, why don't you sign up for this introduction session? And I haven't heard back, but at the same time, it might be 2 weeks away, but that gives me more time to push it too. Because if it was tomorrow, I'd have to really push. So,
right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. So again, that trade off again, how much front loading can you do? And does that give him a chance to get nervous and then back out? Or is it the right amount of time in terms of he'll be just comfortable enough to jump in and do it, but it's not too soon to where it's like surprise, no, no, don't do. You're blowing up his life or something like that from his point of
right.
view. But yes, that might be a good window. That might be the right window, but it's hard to know. And then for you again, how much do you nag him, so to speak, or how many reminders do you give him, or how much do you talk to him about that? Because you can overdo that and then put a bad taste in
Sour the
his mouth about
situation. Yep.
the whole thing that way too. So it's hard. That's a strange and tough tightrope or a razor's edge or something like that. It's
It
got to be
really
the
is.
right amount. And sometimes you don't know what that right amount is. And sometimes that amount changes. But these are all the things that are super important to be thinking about in terms of having that go as well as possible. Because a lot of times parents will see this as a brilliant thing and just push it too hard. And this happens with not just with neurodiverse kids, but kids in general. Like if a parent overdoes something, then it puts a bad taste in the mouth for the kid, even if it was something they were interested in, right? But if you don't, in this case, front load enough or talk to them enough or get them prepared for that interview or what it might look like, then it just may be too much to do last minute and it may come up as like a seeming surprise or they will feel unprepared to go do that interview. Like they
Right.
haven't programmed that into their schedule or into their lives, so it's not going to happen.
Well,
So
yeah. And if they have a negative experience, a lot of times then it sours them for a while. So you try very hard not to pick opportunities that aren't going to be a good fit.
right, yep, this is a common struggle that parents who are trying to find that right mix deal with. And that's where the trick is. This is an individualized situation where you got to know the personality of that particular kid and also be looking for those kind of opportunities that check certain boxes for that kid. Like he's interested in dogs and animals, like that's a good match that way, and has some experience doing that kind of stuff. So, that's all a good match. And so now the trick is, can you convince him to go do that initial interview and get on board with it, particularly if it feels like he's going into a little bit of a slowdown or a slumping period rather than an acceleration period. So, yeah, these are some of those challenges. And again, that's where the talking it over with people, getting different suggestions, and trying to strategize specifically with your particular kid's personality and history and all that stuff in mind can be really helpful.
Well, and for me, and certainly just my family in general, I think one of the things is to find a way to put it on your radar every day to make a run at something. It doesn't have to be an opportunity, getting out of the house or whatever, just to make a run at anything. And I'm still working on how to make that happen. I actually think what I'm going to start doing is putting something on my calendar that just says 4 o'clock every day. Just take 10 minutes and think about, is there anything you could suggest or talk about or do, just to keep the connection open too? Because again, I worry about the isolation.
Yeah, or even go run an errand or go do something, get out of the house, and even if it's a small thing, or go for a walk or do something, right?
Right.
But to be mindful about that and to have that as a priority and to be thinking about it and keeping your eye open for opportunities and looking for things that might be a good fit for him, almost like all the time, right? Kind of like
Right.
always keeping your ear to the ground on what's happening and what might be good opportunities.
Well, and sometimes it's not even just finding an opportunity to get them out of the house, but it's addressing subjects that are challenging for him to deal with. He really, and not just him, but I have a daughter who also is neurodiverse. Dealing with topics that deal with intense feelings are always hard for somebody who's not neurotypical because, again, I think they have gotten so much negative messaging. And one of the things that I really would like to explain to both of my kids, and some of it's maturity, but some of it, I just sometimes wonder if they understand that a lot of social relationships aren't about being the funniest or being the coolest or being the smartest or whatever it is. It's about how the interaction works and how you make that person feel and how they make you feel. And I feel like some of that is lost. And some of that, certainly when you're on the spectrum, you just, you're so busy trying to fit in, that concept gets lost. And I would love to have a discussion with both of my kids to say, it isn't a criticism. You guys are great, whatever. Just want to make sure you understand that's really what relationships are about. If you want to have a good relationship with somebody, you want to think about how they make you feel, but you also want to be thinking about how you can support them and make them feel. And if everything you do is a funny remark at their expense, they're out. It's not going to get you where you want to go.
Right. Yeah, and what's hard is missing some of those social roots or genes or whatever the social awarenesses that go along with this is tricky because then they pick up on patterns like what they see on TV or what they see on social media, and they think, oh, this is how you impress a girl, or this is what you need to do to impress a guy or something like that, right? And so sometimes it just misses the spirit of some of that in terms of general connection and feeling good rather than feeling like you're smarter than them or you're trying to prove how smart you are, so you make them feel belittled or something,
Right.
thinking that you're winning them over with your smarts, but really what it is, kind of helping the other person feel less than you or something along those lines. So how do you have those kind of conversations with them in a way that helps? And sometimes you can use social media or TV shows or movies or whatever to talk about the good side of those relationships too, right? But again, it's really important to say what's going on behind the scenes that make a relationship work versus what you see on the mechanics of it. And it's so hard because, again, a lot of times they're learning how to mask, they learn how to say the right things, or they know that cracking a joke is sometimes a good idea, but then sometimes the joke is way too far, or it's too dark, or it's too much in one way or another.
And we've all
Again,
been there.
Yeah, yeah. Again, and I think it's neurotypical. So yeah, we make those mistakes too, but we can realize we made a mistake for one and go, oh, wait a minute. And then we can apologize or have the empathy for the other person and things like that. That just doesn't come quite as naturally for those on the spectrum. I think that actual good, quote unquote, good parenting, sorry, is good parenting versus bad parenting. But even with neurotypical kids, it's important for parents to have those discussions like, hey, let's talk about some of the subtleties of this. Because kids do pick things up, and neurotypical kids pick up the subtleties of relationships better. They just observe it and they can piece it together. But still, it's important for parents to explicitly talk about, like, hey, this is what makes me feel good in a relationship, or this is what makes me feel connected to somebody, and to really fill in the blanks because they're still getting a ton of exposure to social media and kind of these artificial or fake relationships that
Yeah,
are
which
kind of
makes it so
presented
much
in
more
common
challenging.
media, yeah, in common media or whatever's supposed to be important and what we're supposed to focus on and all that kind of fun stuff. So that's even more important with neurodivergent kids, but still it's harder for them because they don't love those conversations, and it's hard to know when and how to have those conversations and to do it in small batches at a time instead of trying to have one big discussion. It's like leaving breadcrumbs every now and then for them to follow. But the principle of that is hugely important, right? One, being mindful about how much are we pushing versus not pushing, and are we being deliberate in that, or are we letting things slide just because right in this moment it's easier?